Jai Hind students, welcome to my YouTube channel. Students, success is not final, failure is not fatal. It is the courage to continue that counts. So, students, have the courage to follow your dreams and believe in yourself to even do the impossible.
With that positive note, students, let's begin today's session. Today, in this particular episode, we are going to discuss Poisson's ratio, and thereafter we are going to discuss the applications of elasticity and the factors on which the elasticity depends, right? So let's start with this topic, Poisson's ratio. Now students, you must be aware, whenever a wire is suspended from one end and loaded at the other, then it not only increases its length, but at the same time, it also results in the decrease in its diameter. Thus, what I mean to say is that along with the longitudinal strain, there is associated a lateral strain, where lateral strain is the change in the lateral dimensions per unit lateral dimensions, right? And the ratio of this lateral strain to the longitudinal strain is what we call as Poisson's ratio. So before we proceed further, let us first watch this very interesting animation.
Poisson's ratio is an important parameter so as to understand the concept of elasticity. It is an important material property because it gives us key information about how different materials deform under loading. We can start with a quick example, the rubber band. Now, if you take a rubber band and stretch it along its length will obviously increase, but it is also quite intuitive that at the same time, the band will get thinner. Poisson's ratio can tell us how much thinner the band is going to get. What about for a generic lump of cuboid? Take this little orange cuboid. If we apply a compressive force to it, it will expand in the directions which are perpendicular to the direction in which we are applying the load. We call the direction along which the force is applied the longitudinal direction, and we call the perpendicular directions the lateral directions. Now, if we reverse the direction of the force to apply a tensile load, the cuboid will obviously extend in the longitudinal direction and it will contract in the lateral directions. The key concept over here is when you apply a load to the material in one direction, the material will also deform in the lateral directions.
Students, what we have discussed is along with the longitudinal strain, there is associated a lateral strain, and the ratio of the lateral strain to the longitudinal strain is called the Poisson's ratio. Therefore, students, the Poisson's ratio is lateral strain which is lateral strain is the change in the lateral dimension per unit lateral dimension, right? Divided by longitudinal strain. Now let us consider a wire suspended from one end and loaded at the other end. Now, as I've stated, it not only increases its length, but also results in the decrease in its diameter, isn't it? Now, here I've considered L and D to be the original length and the original diameter respectively of the wire. And del L, it represents a small increase in the length, and correspondingly, small decrease in the diameter is del D. So the new diameter of the wire is D minus del D, right? Now let us write the expression for the longitudinal strain. Longitudinal strain would be the change in the longitudinal dimension per unit longitudinal dimension. So it is del L divided by L, and the lateral strain would be minus del D divided by D, the change in the diameter divided by original diameter. Now this negative sign signifies that the final diameter of the wire is less than that of its initial diameter. So there is a decrease in the diameter of the wire. The negative sign suggests this very fact, right? Thus, Poisson's ratio would be given by lateral strain divided by longitudinal strain. So it would be minus del D divided by D divided by del L divided by L. So the terms can be rearranged like this: minus L del D divided by D into del L. Now remember students, Poisson's ratio is the ratio of two similar physical quantities. So obviously it has no units. It is a pure number and hence is dimensionless. So Poisson's ratio is a dimensionless, or it is a pure number, and hence is dimensionless. Okay, now students, what to do is we will try to find out the Poisson's ratio for the constant volume for a given wire. So let us consider V to be the volume of the wire. So if V is the volume of the wire, then wire is in the form of a cylindrical shape, isn't it? And the volume of a cylinder is pi r square into height. Over here height is length L, and r square, radius is half of the diameter. So in place of r we can write d by 2, where d is the diameter. So this is the cross section area, pi d square by 4 multiplied by length. So that will give us the volume of the wire. Clear students? Therefore the small change in the volume, that is del V, it would be given by pi by 4. This can be treated as constant, isn't it? D square. Now these two are variables, isn't it? So D square, first function into differentiation of second function, plus second function into differentiation of first function. The differentiation of d square would be 2d into del d. Clear students? So for zero volume change on stretching, if we consider if V is constant, that is for zero volume change on stretching, del V would be equal to 0. There is no change in the volume, right? Therefore students, pi by 4 d square into del L plus L into twice d into del d, it is equal to 0, which further implies that d square into del L plus twice LD into del D, it is equal to 0. And if you rearrange the terms, then what we get is D multiplied by del L is equal to minus twice L del D, right? Or we can also write it like this: minus del D divided by D divided by del L by L, it is equal to half. Or del D by D, it is the lateral strain. Minus del D by D is the lateral strain, while del L by L is the longitudinal strain. And the ratio of the lateral strain to the longitudinal strain is what we call as Poisson's ratio. Therefore, Poisson's ratio of a wire for zero volume change on stretching, that is equal to half, or 0.5, right? So thus the Poisson's ratio is 0.5 for a perfectly incompressible substance where there is no change in the volume. Frankly, we do not know such a substance. In actual practice, the value of Poisson's ratio is found to lie between 0.5 and -1. So in order to study the values of Poisson's ratio for different materials, let us again watch this very interesting animation.
It's useful to know the theoretical range of Poisson's ratio, which goes from -1 to 0.5. In practice, most real materials have a Poisson's ratio of somewhere between 0 and 0.5. Most metals have a Poisson ratio of around 0.3. Here are some typical values for a few selected materials. Now let's look at how different values of Poisson's ratio affect how a material deforms under loading. We will keep things simple and will consider two-dimensional case. Most materials have Poisson's ratios between 0 and 0.5. When a tensile force is applied, these materials contract in the lateral directions, as we have already seen with our orange cuboid. Now, materials with a Poisson's ratio of 0 are very interesting. When a longitudinal tensile force is applied in such a case, then there is no deformation in the lateral directions. One material that behaves in this way is cork, which has Poisson's ratio close to 0. This property makes it a very useful material for certain applications. A great example is the cork in a bottle of wine, because it does not expand laterally when compressed. As you can see here, it can easily be inserted into the neck of a bottle. Finally, we have materials with negative Poisson's ratios. These are known as auxetic materials. They expand laterally when pulled and contract laterally when compressed, which seems counterintuitive. These are mostly engineered materials like special foams rather than materials occurring naturally in nature. This animation should give you an idea. It is possible to get negative Poisson's ratios. You can see when such a material is compressed, then its lateral as well as longitudinal sections both get decreased.
Now we will discuss the role of elasticity in everyday life. There are various examples or rather applications of elasticity of materials in daily life. While designing a bridge, a building or a crane, a thorough understanding of elastic behavior of materials to be used is of utmost importance. Now, before we start discussing the applications, let us again watch this very interesting animation related to the applications of elasticity.
You might have seen a crane lifting heavy loads on a construction site. The cranes have a thick metal rope so that the attached load does not break the rope under the stress. This happens because the stress produced by the load is less than the elastic limit of the rope. Thus, the cranes are designed to reduce the stress by varying the diameter of the rope as per the elastic limit of the material. Just like cranes, bridges are also designed in a way that they are not affected by the stress of the load. However, after many years of use, cracks occur in the bridges. This happens because the bridges lose their elastic strength due to the continuous stress produced by the load. Such bridges become unsafe for use. The special design of the bridges we are referring to make use of beams. The beams used in bridges play an important role in reducing the stress such that they can withstand the huge load of moving traffic and people. Let us consider the case of a beam loaded at the center and supported near its ends as shown. The beam of length L, breadth B, and depth D, when loaded at the center by a load W, the depression suffered by the beam is given by del is equal to WL cube divided by 4YB D cube. Y is the Young's modulus. So, greater the value of the Young's modulus for the material of the beam, lesser will be the depression. Also, since the value of depression varies inversely as its breadth and as the cube of its depth, therefore, the depression can be reduced more effectively by increasing the depth of the beam rather than increasing its breadth. Thus, it is advantageous to increase its depth rather than the breadth of the beam. In order to avoid buckling, change in both the breadth and the depth are made and an I-shaped beam blank is used. This section provides a large load-bearing surface and enough depth to prevent bending. This shape reduces the weight of the beam without affecting its strength. Due to the same reason, a bridge is designed with I-shaped girders so that it does not bend or break due to the load of the moving traffic. The railway track beam's cross-section is also of I-shape so that it can withstand the load of the train. Not only the beams, but the pillars of columns and buildings and bridges are also designed to reduce stress. A pillar with rounded end supports less load than that with the distributed shape. So, distributed shape pillars are preferred over rounded end pillars.
Let's recap the applications of elasticity. Now students, any metallic part of a machinery is never subjected to a stress beyond the elastic limit of the material. So basically students, in case the metallic part of the machinery is subjected to a stress beyond the elastic limit, then what will happen is the material will get permanently deformed and obviously it will hamper its working. The thickness of metallic ropes used in cranes to lift and move heavy weights is decided on the basis of the elastic limit of the material of the rope and obviously the factor of safety, right? The ropes of the cranes are actually made by a number of thin wires which are woven together into a rope of required radius. The bridges are declared unsafe after long use. Now students, during its long use and continuous use, what happens is a bridge undergoes quick alternating strains continually. So it results in the loss of elastic strength of the bridge. So after a long period, such a bridge starts developing large strains corresponding to the same usual value of stress, and ultimately it may lead to collapse of the bridge. So that it does not happen, the bridges are declared unsafe after their long use. And students, we are also aware, as we have watched in the animation, in designing a beam for its use to support a load in construction of either roofs or bridges, it is advantageous to increase its depth rather than the breadth of the beam. A hollow shaft is found to be much stronger than a solid shaft made of the same and the equal amounts of material. Actually, students, it can be proved that the torque required to twist a hollow shaft is greater than the torque necessary to twist a solid shaft of the same mass, length and material through the same angle. So therefore we can safely conclude that a hollow shaft will be much stronger than a solid shaft. The electric poles are given hollow structure for the same reason actually. Students, let us discuss the factors which affect the elasticity of a material. First is the effect of hammering and rolling. Effect of hammering and rolling. Hammering and rolling, students, it results in the decrease in the plasticity of the material due to the breakup of crystal grains into still smaller units, and due to the decrease in the plasticity, the elasticity of the material increases. So by hammering and rolling, the elasticity of the material, it tends to increase, right? So in this case, the elasticity increases and the plasticity obviously decreases. Second is, students, effect of annealing. Now, the metals are annealed by heating and then cooling them slowly. Such metals are found to be flexible and they are also found to be ductile. And annealing results in increase in the plasticity of the material due to the formation of large crystal grains. And hence, the result of annealing is the elasticity of the material tends to decrease. So in this case, the elasticity decreases. Third is, students, effect of the presence of impurities, that is the foreign materials. Effect of the presence of impurities. Now basically the effect of the presence of impurities in a material can be both ways. That is, it can either increase as well as it can also decrease the elasticity of the material. And the type of effect, it entirely depends upon the nature of the impurity which is present in the material, right? And fourth is, students, the elasticity of a given material, it also depends upon the temperature. Now in most of the cases, the increase in temperature of the material causes decrease in the elasticity of the material. And the elasticity of invar, it does not change with the change in the temperature, right? So these are some of the factors on which the elasticity of the material of a given body depends. Here I must mention that the metals are generally tempered by quenching them, that is, they are heated to an extremely high temperature and then reheated to a lower temperature and then cooled slowly. And such metals are found to be tough and they are also found to be thus elastic. Now students, let us discuss elastic after effect. Now students, we are aware that when the deforming force is removed, then the bodies, it tend to return to their respective original or normal state, isn't it? And it has been found that there are some bodies which return to their original states immediately, taking no time at all, But there are some other bodies as well that take appreciably long time to return to its original state. Let me give you some example. A quartz fiber, it returns immediately to its normal state when the twisting torque acting on it stops to act. But on the other hand, if you consider a glass fiber, it takes hours to return to its original state. Students, as the term suggests, elastic after effect is actually the delay in regaining the original or the normal state by a body after the removal of the deforming force. That is known as elastic after effect. This term is elastic fatigue. Now students, this elastic fatigue, it occurs when a metal is subjected to repeated loading and unloading. Now, due to the continuous alternating strains, such a metal is said to have been tired or fatigued or enervated, and this phenomena is known as elastic fatigue. And if a body is subjected to repeated strains beyond its elastic limit, then what happens is it ultimately breaks. For example, a hard wire, students, in order to break it, what we do is we repeatedly bend it in opposite directions like this. We do it like this. In order to break a hard wire, we repeatedly bend it in the opposite directions. These are known as alternating strains. So when a body is subjected to alternating strain, then what happens is its elastic strength get reduced, it get tired, it get fatigued, it get enervated, and eventually and ultimately the body breaks. So that is known as elastic fatigue. So the elastic fatigue is defined as the loss in the strength of a material which is caused due to the repeated alternating strains to which the material is subjected. Students, after doing all the theoretical topics, let us try to attempt this question. What type of elasticity is involved in the following cases? First is a gas. Second is a liquid. Third is a wire pulled at its ends. And the fourth one is a book with a tangential force applied uniformly to its upper face and the lower face remaining stationary on the table. Right? Now let's consider case A. Now students, in the case of a gas, the bulk modulus of elasticity is involved, as a gas as well as a liquid both possess only volume. Gas as well as liquid, they do not possess any length or shape of their own. Therefore, in cases A as well as in cases B, the bulk modulus of elasticity is involved in gas or liquid. So, in both the cases A and B, the type of elasticity is the bulk modulus of elasticity. Now let's concentrate on part C. C is a wire pulled at its ends. So in case C, Young's modulus of elasticity is involved, as by pulling the wire at its ends, the length of the wire will definitely increase. That is, there is a change in the length of the wire. So thus, in the case of a wire pulled at its ends, the type of elasticity must be Young's modulus of elasticity. It must be Young's modulus of elasticity. And in the last case, students, where one face of the book is fixed while the upper face is applied a tangential force, right? So, in this case, modulus of rigidity must be involved, as there is a change in the shape of the book. Clear? So, in the fourth case, the type of elasticity must be modulus of rigidity. So students, these are the types of elasticity which are involved in case A, B, C and D. So students, I hope whatever is being taught to you in this particular session, it's pretty clear to you, right? Everything should be absolutely crystal clear. There shouldn't be any doubt in any topic, right? So let's conclude this particular session. So do join me in my next lecture where we'll be discussing some numericals based on elasticity. So students, till then, do take very good care of yourself and keep watching my videos. Thank you.